Oh, I've touched my mom like a bunch of times. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. It's What is Comics, the official Indie Comics Creator Con podcast. I am your host, Jamie Jones, with co-host, host extraordinaire. We're double hosts, Matt Sardo.
Hey yo, how's it going, Jamie?
It's good. It's been a good week. Things are good. I've drawn a lot of pages of comic books, and that's how I get to know if my days feel like I do anything. Is
And we're going to be in the same room together this weekend at OAX.
very excited. OAX this weekend, Orlando. We're gonna be living it up. Matt Sardo.
Because now that IC3 is part of Comic Art Fans, we get a little perks here. We got little perks. We get to go to shows.
Yeah, we get to go to shows, talk to some other artists. Hopefully, we are able to do a couple of interviews, talk to some people. I think we need to talk to Bart Sears. I need to talk to Bart Sears. We should do that on camera.
Yes. Listen, Bart. Not going to say that to him. Do we have a guest today?
We do have a guest today. Our guest today is Ryan Murphy, artist of TURTLEMAN, Year One, and Living a Fantasy. This was a really cool, fun conversation. It's nice to talk to somebody who has, I feel like, just started their journey into comics, but also has done so much in such little time. We talk a little bit about belligerence. We talk a little bit about just dedicating time and space to making a thing, and he kind of really represents doing the work.
And one of my goals for IC3 is to bring up creators. And the big thing with Ryan is that he came to IC3 last year just, as a general person, just a regular person wandering around showing his books and stuff like that. And now this year he has a table. So again, we're seeing the steps of creators making the march, being persistent. That's going to be a theme.
I think that is the theme of IC3 as a whole. Is this is a show for creators by creators, and when that gets infectious, right? Like you get people growing and wanting to be a part of something, wanting to be a part of the community, thinking that they have the chops to do so, and then doing it, and that's really special.
In this Indie Comics Creator Con on March 15th in New Haven at Southern Connecticut State University. Oh my God, at Southern Connecticut State University. Yes, that's the name of it. It's not State College. Penn State. Get out of my head. Get out of my head. There's free parking. We have 150 creators coming down. It's going to be an amazing time. Jamie's going to be taking care of some panels.
Yep.
Got some panels. Jim Rugg, Tom Scioli, Dean Haspel are coming to town. There's gift bags for the first 100 attendees. We have a scavenger hunt this year
because we're taking over the entire third floor of the building. It's going to be great. We've got little like side mission rooms.
There's going to be some portfolio reviews. I'll have more info on that later. Tickets are only $8. Go to indiecomicscreatorcon.com for all the details.
But we can't start this episode without mentioning our sponsors, Matt.
Hey yo. Comics Wellspring for all our printed material. Those guys believe in us and we believe in them.
Cosmic Lion Productions.
Hey, I know those guys. Eli
I know those guys too.
Cosmic Lion Island. He has his own island. Dark Horse Comics has provided some swag for the gift bags. Monkeys Fighting Robots. That's where it all started. Check them out. And we have a new sponsor. Yay. It's Clapping Monkey. Yay. New sponsor, New Haven's Alternate Universe is going to be setting up at the show. They're also going to be providing some books for the gift bags as well. Whew.
And recently, we have been adopted, taken under its wing of the Comic Art Fans family. And you can check out all of their YouTube stuff. And you can check out their website. They have an app now, right? That's live. The Comics Art Live app.
It is live. The Comics Art Fans app, where you can create a gallery and you can also check out other people's galleries. And since social media is a little whack job right now, this might be the thing for creators and artists. Just saying.
That's exciting news. Should we get into this talk?
Hells yes.
All right. Now it's time. What is comics with R.D. Murphy? There's like huge like dearth of cartoonists that start making comics over COVID. And it's wild to me. Like so much of the people that come to IC3 are all like, I started making comics over COVID. And it's crazy to see like the amount of work that has been produced in the last, 5 years of just people needing an outlet and needing to make something. I'm curious as to what your what era of Cartoon Network were you watching? It was a big question. I had to bang the table.
You're so emphatic about it.
I'm so emphatic. Yeah, listen, I care about a lot of things. Cartoon Network is a huge thing for me.
I mean, I used to watch well, I forget what was like the Justice League show on. That was that Cartoon Network or was that was something else, I think. But
WB.
that, and then I remember I was like a big fan of Samurai Jack and like that kind of era.
Okay, immediately I know
exactly.
Immediately we're in the same era. We're
okay,
we have to be around the same age because that Samurai Jack, Dexter's Lab, Johnny Bravo, all that stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah. What was the other question too? Sorry, I missed
I don't remember. I was just talking. It's
But yeah, it was like that era. Like I was just kind of like drawing like whatever I saw, like whatever my mom would just like put like markers and paper in front of me, and I would just like draw the characters that I was seeing.
So your parents were kind of supportive of your artistic endeavors, or where were they on the scale?
I feel like they were very, my mom. Well, yeah, both of them are like very supportive. My dad always tried to make sure it was like I remember I told him like when I was a kid I wanted to be like a writer when I was older, and he would tell me, maybe like go into like editing or like something where like you can make money doing it. But I feel like, for the most part, like they've always been like supportive. I mean, even so, when I started doing tattooing, they were like my first like test subjects in a way.
Oh,
like
really interesting.
Yeah. Oh, I've tattooed my mom like a bunch of times. Yeah.
That might just be the intro right there.
Yeah, that's the. I don't know. I've tattooed my mom a bunch of times.
Yeah.
So how has tattooing helped your comic book work? Like, what did you learn? Like,
I honestly I feel like I learned like, well, I don't know. I feel like I learned a lot through tattooing. Some of it almost like against my will, because it was like it was like the pressure was like on because when I first got into tattooing, it was kind of just like, because I got a tattoo during COVID with those stimulus checks, and then I was like, this is really interesting, and then I bought like a tattoo machine off of Amazon, and then started like doing tattoos like on myself and like some friends, and then I I got like a job at a studio, and then I started like learning because I was not as good as like some of the other artists, and I kind of had to like learn like pretty quickly if I wanted to make like quality work on people's bodies forever. And then it was almost because I feel like in the back of my mind, comics was always the thing I was like more interested in. And I remember talking to other tattoo artists, and like they would kind of ask me about like, like what's like your long-term like artistic goals, I guess. Because I think for like a lot of them, like tattooing isn't like always a long-term like career for them. But I feel like for me, I don't know, comics just always kind of became a thing I was always going back to. And I learned a lot that like through tattooing that I would then carry into comics. Like for instance, Procreate. I was able to get an iPad and learn Procreate through like the money I was making tattooing, and like because that's like that's all we used for like making designs and like printing out stencils and stuff. So I was able to learn a lot of tricks that way. And then just like stuff about like coloring, making designs flow, things like that, I would like eventually kind of carry into the comics that I would make, or try to carry into the comics that I make.
So are you using Procreate kind of as your main art tool, your main comics making tool? It's all Procreate?
Yeah, I feel like I do want to make a comic traditionally, like probably pretty soon. It's just like the convenience for me is like so great. Like I feel like
Oh
I just
yeah.
love being able to like sit on my couch with like my girlfriend, watch TV, and like work on my comics. But yeah, there is like something that I feel like I don't know. There's something about like traditional um art that is kind of like lost. I feel like in the translation. Um, but yeah, that's like the main tool that I use. I do know like I can do it like traditionally. Like I have all this stuff. I have my little desk right here. But yeah, for the most part, I just use Procreate.
Yeah, because
Nice.
I look at your Daredevil tattoo and I was like, man, I feel like you could be like a really amazing painter, you know? And does that skill translate like that way?
Well, it's funny. It's funny. So I remember when I was like first getting into like drawing again, and like a lot of the tattoo artists that I was like um admiring and like kind of trying to replicate were like realism artists, and I still love like a lot of realism artists. And but I think for me, like when I was learning it, I was thinking realism is like the pinnacle of art. Like if you can make something look realistic, that's like, you know, like that's the best. That's the best you can do it. But then I think once I figured out how to do it, I kind of realized, oh, you're just like taking something that exists and then like replicating it, which is like not too difficult. And then I tried doing like more illustrative stuff, and that became like more challenging. And that's kind of like what I've been leaning into ever since, is like trying to kind of figure out my illustrative style. Because you know, with that, you're not like just using a reference picture and like copying it. You're like you have to think about the composition and like all that good stuff.
So when you are uh take us there. When you're going in and you're starting a comic, and you okay, you start drawing comics. You start drawing comics around the same time that you start tattooing, or a little bit after. It
There's
feels
like
like
overlap,
everything just kind
yeah,
of happens all at once, right? And it's
yeah.
just like, hey, here's all of the art. I'm doing this now, full in. Where do you start? Like, so Turtle Man is your first long form comic. I guess it's also like your first comic book, right? You were doing some strip gag stuff
Yeah.
beforehand. So you go in, it's long, right? Like I'm always impressed with guys who start up a thing and they're like, I'm gonna do 5 issues of a story, and then it actually gets completed. Because
Like,
gosh, it's real easy to not complete something.
yeah,
And
it
it's
annoyed my
also
girlfriend quite a bit.
it's antithetical of like what I tell people when they're starting to make comics, right? It's not, I'm like, hey, do an 8-pager, start with a 2-pager, build your way up to 8 pages, build your way up to 20, right? Do shorter form stuff. But you have just jumped right in. Even living a fantasy, which is your new thing that you're working on, is what we're like 5 issues in. I feel like you've done 5 issues of that already. That's an insane undertaking. What's your plan of attack when you get to do something that's 5 issues long?
Well, so with Turtle, thank you again. I appreciate that. But with Turtle Man, the first issue I did for my senior, because I did my undergrad at CCSU for illustration, and you have to do like a senior capstone, like a final assignment, or like a like a big senior project. And I was working with my illustration professor Eben Kling, who's another like terrific artist. But it's funny because he makes his own comics. But I remember when I was in my classes, I would like show him like, I would do like comics for like some of his assignments. And I would talk to him about comics, and he like did not really like superhero comics, which I can understand. He's an adult, but like the I remember I was telling him like, I want to do a comic for like my senior project, and I want it to be like a superhero comic, and he was like, absolutely not. And then I was like, well, but like, what if I do it like kind of like a like a twist, like maybe like Don Quixote meets Batman type thing. I could like satirize some like superhero tropes. and that kind of won him over. And then I was able to like make it for my senior show, and then I don't know. I was like, because I did the first issue, and I was like, this could just be like a one and done. But then I went to there's a comic book store in Southington, Connecticut, Boom Tube Comics. Great comic book store. And I remember I went there, and I was showing it to the Dan who owns the store, and I was asking if like you'd be interested in carrying it, and he agreed. And then some people who went there started reading it, like they read the first issue, and then they're asking me like, when's the second issue gonna come out? Like I was like, I wasn't really planning on doing more, but I guess I'll do more if like you guys are gonna read it. And then the way I approached it was I thought of like the titles for each of the chapters. Like that was like the guideline. I was like, okay, I want it to be like I want it to be Turtle Man Begins, then Turtle Man Returns, then Turtle Man v Man Turtle, and then Under the Red Hair, and then it's going to be Death of Turtle Man to end it, but he's not going to actually die. I was like, that's going to be what it's going to be, and then I'll just like work backwards and like make sure, you know, everything makes sense. I can like connect one thing to the next thing. That was like my approach, I guess, was just thinking like, okay, this is going to be the titles. These are going to be like the main beats of like the story. And then just like filling it in from there. And that's kind of like how I've been approaching Living a Fantasy too. That one has been like a little bit different because like I feel like I've been sort of figuring it out like as I do it, because it kind of started more as like gag comics, and then I've been trying to kind of like expand the lore more recently. But yeah, that's kind of like the way I've been approaching them.
And you said that when you were a kid, you wanted to be a writer. Are you still like, is writing a heavy part of your process? I'm always interested in like the cartoonist brain and going from switching from writer mode to art mode, or are you just doing it all at once? Do you trust yourself to hit 20 pages and know that it's going to wrap up just fine? What's your, or are you plotting out every page, knowing exactly the beats that go on in every page and doing it that way?
It's kind of funny because like, yeah, I used to be like when I was younger, like when I was in high school, I was getting very into like writing like short stories, and like I was planning on being like, you know, like a novelist. But you know, things changed. And then for my approach with like comics, I was kind of, I don't know, I think I should probably get into the habit of making scripts more, just to like I don't know, it seems like it would be useful, but I feel like the way I kind of approach it is I just think of like, I don't know, like I have like certain ideas for each issue or each chapter. And then I kind of just like make a list of like either jokes that I want to happen or things that like need to happen, like character interactions or whatever, in order to get to like the next thing. So I'll make like a list of like the beats, and then I kind of just like figure out ways to like connect them. I'll like thumbnail traditionally and then like transfer into Procreate. But yeah, I feel like I don't really do like too much scripting, which I probably should. But yeah, and I feel like a lot of times I don't really like know what the dialogue necessarily is until like I finish the page. Like I'll know like what's generally happening, but yeah, I'll just like fill it in afterwards. Like he looks like he'll probably be saying this, or like she'll probably be responding with something like this.
Yeah, you do a little punch up at the end of it. That's the beautiful thing about comics, is you have the ability to punch it up after you've written it. The first pass is always the bad pass. It always is.
Yeah, that's the rough draft.
Yeah.
I want to take it back a few steps. So you have your first issue of TurtleMan, and then you walk into BoomTube Comics, which is an amazing store, and Dan is an amazing man. I love that shop. But where does that like courage or like moxie come from to be like, I got my first comic book, I'm gonna go into the comic book shop and try to sell it? Like, where's that come
I mean,
from?
honestly, ever since that I think ever since I had to handle that crazy lady that walked into that tattoo studio, I've just felt like I can handle whatever. Like I'll be all right. But yeah, I remember with Dan, it was actually funny because I mentioned it to him, like I was like buying some comics there, and I was like, hey, like I have like a comic, would you like be interested in like having it here? And he's like, yeah, you can like email it to me and I'll look at it. I was like, okay, and then I emailed it to him, and I also knew that they meet like there's like a group of like friends of his and like regulars at the comic book store, and they all always get together like Wednesday nights, and so yeah, I remember he didn't respond to my email, and then I went like back on Wednesday, and then he was like, I haven't like looked at it. I was like, okay, yeah, no worries, and I went back like the next Wednesday, and like I just kind of kept going back until like I was like, and then he like, and then I actually had like printed copies too at that point, and I was like, this is it, like, do you want to look at it? And he's like, oh, this actually looks like really professional. I was like, thanks, man. And then yeah, and then he was just like, okay, I guess I'll put it up in the store, and yeah, I've been grateful ever since.
Persistence. That's what we're
Yeah.
hearing.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, sometimes I feel like you kind of have to be like a little bit annoying with certain things.
Well, this entire job is belligerence, right? I feel like if I
Yeah.
wasn't belligerent, I would not be in comics at all anymore. Like it
Yeah.
would still like I just wake up every morning and begrudgingly sit at my desk, and that's how this goes. You
Yeah.
kind of have to have that a little bit.
Yeah, never give up.
Yep.
You did this giant Marvel pinup. Take us from the beginning and walk us through the whole process.
Okay. Well, yeah, I remember. So, because I was on TikTok and I saw there was at least one guy, and I think there was a couple other people that were doing. They would basically do like a character a day for like. There's this one guy I saw who did the Family Guy characters. Like he would do a Family Guy character a day. He had like a piece of paper, and he'd draw like one character in the first character in the corner, and then just kind of like build it up from there. And then he would like put audio from the Family Guy episodes in it. And I was like, that's a really good idea. And then I was like, I'll just do it for like Marvel characters. And so I started with Professor X because I was like, that guy's definitely on the ground. So then I did Professor X, and then I went like, people could comment their suggestions for the next day, which I thought was like a good way to kind of like build a community, like be able to like meet people like online, and like so I would draw like their suggestion for like each day. Yeah, and then I got to a point where I was like, the canvas is not big enough because there's like certain characters that I want to include that like I won't be able to fit. Like I couldn't fit Galactus, I couldn't fit like Stiltman. So I kind of had to like keep like expanding it and then expanding it when I was like, I want to be able to put this character in at some point. And yeah, and then there was the TikTok ban, which I guess didn't happen. I was trying to like finish it before that, so I did a few like ahead of time, and yeah, I feel pretty good about it. Like I feel like I was able to get like most of, or like all the, in my mind, like key players, and what was great too about like having people online comment their suggestions is there, because I thought I knew Marvel pretty well, but there was like some people in there I was like, I've never heard of this. I've never heard of Junk Pile before, or Cactus, or God, what were the other ones? I knew the Big Wheel, but that was like another one where like people didn't know, or Doorman. I don't know. So many like. But I also liked it too because it's like, this is a character that like no one knows except for like this one person on TikTok, and it can kind of be like immortalized in this piece.
And so basically like 190 days. That's what you put into this piece of
Yeah.
work. Okay, so persistence. Happening
Yeah.
again.
The continuation of being able to do something is Ryan's whole thing.
Yeah, I feel like I'm really glad that it's over now, because like now I can take that energy and apply it towards living a fantasy, because now I'm trying to do that like a day, like work on that every day instead of. But it was nice to have that as like kind of a, I don't know, like a thing to look forward to at the end of the day. Like, okay, I'll just draw like a quick little headshot of a Marvel character.
It's crazy how things like just having to do something every day takes up so much of your headspace, where now you'll realize now that it's done, right, that you have so much more time and so much more headspace for like just other things. I recently just finished doing the daily strip for the Baboon, and immediately like I'm able to write so much more because I'm not thinking about it anymore. And it's a great, it's like big weight off. Everything's dandy now that you've done something once every day. And it's real crazy. And also like holding yourself to the once a day thing is admirable.
Yeah, because like no one cares except for me. Like I need to do it for like myself.
And then I looked at your Ghouls Gala pinup, and I bring a lot of baggage of like things that I've read or things that I've watched to that piece. Can you talk about that piece to me and tell me like what you were trying to accomplish before I tell you like what I thought you were trying to accomplish?
No,
I'm very curious.
don't do it. Don't do it.
I
Don't
don't,
explain yourself to him. You don't have to do this.
I don't, I mean, I don't know. I did that like yeah, last year, and I honestly the thought process behind that was just like, well, because I did this is also in my illustration professor Evan Kling's class because he had like a this one assignment where it's like you have to make like a chaotic poster, kind of like inspired by like Where's Waldo or like things like that, where there's like a billion characters on a page. So I did the Greek mythology for that, and I did Norse mythology, and then I did another one too that was like more of like a superhero thing. It was for like this podcast. But I wanted to do another one, and then like Halloween was coming up, and I've always been like a huge horror fan. So kind of similar to like the Marvel thing. I was trying to think of like the key players, I guess, in my mind for like horror movies, and try to like put them put them in a scenario together.
Yeah, no, the Where's Waldo kind of like I had like a Curious George kind of moment there as well, and then like Mad Magazine ish style things
Yeah,
all popping up in my head.
that was your baggage.
That was my baggage. That was my baggage.
Well, you're right. You're right.
But then and also like I really didn't even dive into like all the stuff that's going on in this piece. And
Is there
like
any like
that's
you
a lot.
don't know?
I
Are
just
are
see
you like a
I
horror
just see
fan?
timely stuff here. Like Nosferatu's right there for us, and like
Yeah.
you've talked about the TikTok ban. Like we're hitting all the timely stuff going on right now.
Yeah.
Um, Probably more of the modern stuff will probably go over my head within like the past 10 years of horror stuff because like
Yeah.
To tie it back to your comics, when you're doing something that is, with a bunch of characters or a bunch of ideas and a bunch of, for lack of a better term, icons,
Mm.
there's an element of parody to the things that you're doing. You are poking fun at superheroes living a fantasy, has like a Voldemort-esque guy, right? Like you're clearly picking uh, cultural icons to make fun of, to kind of punch up at. What is your process in picking the thing that you parody, right?
So for like Turtle Man, for instance, I guess I consider myself like a student of like the superhero genre, and there's a lot of things in it that like bothered bothered me like around the time like when I was making Turtle Man, like I think like Miss Marvel died or something, and then she like came right back to life, and I was like, oh my god, like they're doing this again. So stuff like that. I just like when there's like I don't know something that like um yeah, a trope or something like that that like is uh something I just want to like make fun of, like with the sidekick, the hair in Turtle Man, like there's always a sidekick that like leaves and then comes back, like Winter Soldier, Jason Todd. I'm sure there's others, but probably like Superboy. And then yeah, with like living a fantasy, I feel like I don't know. I guess I don't really like know like how I think of choosing like the icons. But I remember with the Voldemort character in particular, that was kind of like an idea I had. Um,
oh no.
the idea would just be like, yeah, like a clearly like Voldemort character, uh, and like following his kind of like story of him like just planning on going to the school and like destroying it. Because I feel like that's always like a very funny thing about Voldemort in like Harry Potter is that like that's like what his goal is, to like destroy a school. Like, come on, man, have bigger goals than that. But yeah, I don't know, stuff like that. And uh, some of it's just like if it just makes enough sense for like the joke, like the vampire werewolf love triangle thing. I feel like that's like been a common enough like Twilight, other things probably. I feel like it just like happens enough where I'm like, the audience will understand like the joke I'm trying to make.
The reference. Yeah. That's always
Yeah.
always the thing, because I play around with a lot of tropes and stuff, and my fear is always like, is anyone going to actually get this? And it's
Yeah.
do people know what I'm referencing? And the answer
Right.
for me most of the time is no, because I'm referencing stuff in the 20s. But uh, but for referencing something that's now, do you think that, are you actively trying to figure out things that hold up over a long period of time, a tested period of time? Or are you like, this is, we're having a conversation with other media today, and that is informing what it informs. Next year's issues will inform that year, right? Are you thinking
Yeah.
in that term, or are you thinking long term, this is not just in a microcosm or a bubble of 2025, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I do like, well, I guess now I'm like trying to kind of think more ahead, like, because I mean, when I made the first Living a Fantasy, because the the first like 3 pages, which you might have noticed, like the format is different. That was actually for my illustration class also. So it's been kind of like a thing that's been like developing over like a long period of time, and I'll just kind of like have like ideas, and then like the Voldemort character, or Draven as he is in like the series, that was kind of just like that like original idea, like it'd be funny to have like like follow like this guy as he's like planning on like going to like this school. But then I guess like, yeah, more recently I was like, I kind of want to get more into his backstory and kind of flesh him out more. And so yeah, I guess now I'm kind of like trying to think of like long term, how can I make this guy like more, how can I make these characters like more of my own?
Yeah.
Start with like the original parody, but like kind of take them beyond that.
That's I mean, that's done in comics so successfully so much, right? I immediately
Mhm.
start thinking about Cobra, which starts as a love letter of Suicide Squad and then goes into this giant epic of all the characters are, by the end of it, very little like represent
Yeah.
who they originally were. That I find interesting, right? It's like there's a seed, there's something to go on, and then you're building and creating your own world, which you do. Living a Fantasy kind of starting off, I think, as a parody gag book, and then growing into something that feels like it's like the world feels lived in, and it's often you don't get that stuff unless you're like writing a comic strip for 7 years, right? And then like, oh, then Popeye shows up, and then you have the main character of this book is a completely different character than when it started, right?
Yeah.
I
Thanks. I
just
appreciate
find
it.
that,
Yeah, I
yeah,
feel like,
I think you have
yeah.
done something that is clearly, like, if you decide to continue to make Living a Fantasy far into issue 50, I think it will be a shy twinkle of what you started off as, and I think that's a cool thing.
Yeah, yeah, that would be cool. Yeah,
So
because I feel
50
like, I
issues,
don't know.
right? That's what you're shooting for?
That's uh I mean, we can go further. Maybe 51. But I feel like like with yeah, my favorite thing about like a lot of things in like the fantasy genre, like I don't know, Lord of the Rings and Terry Pratchett books, and I'm like a huge fan of the video game Skyrim. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but I love like in those how it always feels like there's just like constantly like stuff happening around in the background, and like sometimes they don't acknowledge it, but like things are just like happening around the characters, and I always thought that was like uh cool. And it also works for me because like if I'm getting bored of like drawing something, I can just be like, okay, I'm gonna go to like this character now because this is probably gonna be more interesting to focus on.
The pacing in Living in a Fantasy is drastically different than Turtle Man Year One. Was that something that you planned out, or was that subconscious?
um I don't know, maybe it's subconscious. I feel like I haven't really well, yeah, I guess with Living a Fantasy, I know because with Turtle Man, I wasn't even really planning on going beyond like the first issue. I was just like, I'll try to do like four more so I can collect it as a paperback because that'd be sweet. But yeah, and I keep like debating going back to it, but a part of me likes the fact that like it's finished because that was like another thing I was like trying to do with it. Because I feel like superhero comics they never finish, and that kind of annoys me. But yeah, with Living a Fantasy, I am like planning on doing more with it. So I am kind of trying to make sure there's like there's still like seeds planted for like further storylines, things like that. So I guess yeah, I'm especially with like the recent chapters, I'm trying to make it like the pacing, keep the pacing like at a at a good pace where you know things can kind of have time to um develop.
It clips, man. Like just I'm always a big fan of every 3 pages flipping to another like to another character entirely. And that's like
You like that?
oh yeah, it's a huge boon that comic books have that we could just like in 3 pages we're in a whole nother setting, and it makes the book feel more dense, even though it's like
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be,
Well,
but you're like your mind is changing place
it's
to
actually
place.
it's fun because I remember when I was doing because I did Turtle Man and I brought the book to IC3 because I wanted to like show people. And I remember there was this one guy who I showed it to who was he meant it like in a completely like genuine way, but he was like saying like you know like, you should really like try doing like color with this. And I was like, yeah, like it's not like I didn't do it with color, like that wasn't like the point, but I wanted to kind of show that I could do color with Living a Fantasy, and then changing like the characters every few pages. That was more just like it for me. It was like okay, like these characters have like each kind of like a color theme. But if I keep it on like one character for too long, then like I feel like as you're reading it, it'll get stale because you're just looking at like the same colors, the same thing. And so I think I wanted to kind of keep it more like dynamic with the coloring by like switching around.
Are you writing it basically like page 1 to page 20? And that's just like when you hit 3 pages or 4 pages of the wizard, you're like, all right, this is done. I'm bored, so I'm switching. Are you working on your own path, or are you acting on like a set path that you've already like written out?
Uh, I don't know. Well, like for the one I'm doing right now, it's kind of I feel like I am almost like because I want to just like finish it so I can have it for IC3. So there is like a part of me that feels like I'm kind of like putting tracks down like as I'm driving the train. But I do yeah, I have like sort of like rough plans for like I'll do like the thumbnail sketches like before I start. Just to kind of like get an idea. But I sometimes I change them around or like
Yeah.
completely because yeah, I'll like I'll do it and I'll look at like the thumbnail like when I get to page like 15 or whatever, and I'll be like, actually, this is pretty boring. This is as good as I thought it would be. Some of it I'm kind of just like figuring it out as I go, and then yeah, it's kind of like what you were saying. Like I'll be doing like a few pages, and I'll realize like this is I kind of want to skip to a different character. Maybe I'll go back to the Owl Wizard. That's probably more interesting right now.
Yeah.
So my experience reading your books is in huge chunks. I read all of Turtle Man year one, and then I read all of Living Fantasy. So I read it in giant chunks. So going from black and white to color, it was a very abrupt change. And then I was like,
Mm,
oh, this is it was a cool change, but also I'm trying to figure out how a general reader would have that experience as well. Would they have read all this and because somebody would like buy Turtle Man 1 and then come back for Turtle Man 2, so it'd be more of a more textile kind of thing.
mm.
But I guess the general question is like with Living Fantasy, like how has your color palette like evolved, like coloring skill, and like you're all doing this digitally as well too, like everything.
Yeah, living a fantasy. I kind of well, yeah, like I said, like I wanted to kind of show that like I can do coloring. Um, and I feel like a lot of it is like inspired by I don't know, just certain like fantasy. Like I remember like when I was a kid, just reading like you know storybooks and even like kind of like Wizard of Oz kind of has like inspired me for like some of the coloring choices. Like I always loved when like a world like that is very like vibrant and colorful. And I think it makes like a good contrast for like the stuff happening in it where it's like very colorful and but like I don't know, there's weird stuff happening in it. More recently, I've kind of been playing around with like certain tricks and Procreate, like airbrushing, changing the border colors, things like that. Just And some of it also kind of, I feel like by experimenting, I'm almost thinking like, should I go back and like redo some of the old pages so it looks more consistent? But I don't know. That's something I'll probably have to figure out at a
Well,
later time.
here's a question: how many issues do you
Yeah,
plan on doing? Right? Do you have a set goal? Do you have an idea of where you want to go with it?
I do have. Yeah, I have ideas for like
Yeah, what's
if
that
there's
number? What's that issue number, man?
okay. If my girlfriend Sarah told me don't say the number. She actually told me that she was like, if you say a number, then like you're gonna like have to stick with it because I'm like that. But if my goal at the very least is to do probably like 15, like do like 3 like paperbacks.
Nice.
Keep it like like Lord of the Rings. Keep it like
Yeah.
a trilogy.
Yeah.
And
Then
I do have like ideas for.
then don't go back and color it. Let it live. Let the conversation of your book be, I have gotten better over 15 issues. One, because by the end of issue 15, right, or arbitrary issue 10, arbitrary issue 25, you're gonna want to go. You will get better just by product of putting something out. So don't go back. Just let it live. Go, and then
That's true.
you have a book that is a conversation of between yourself, right, for the last several years. It's nice to look back at that kind of stuff.
That's true. Yeah, I do. I feel like that's like one of my favorite things about comics is just like how like seeing like how I evolve and just seeing how other artists like evolve over like their runs. It's really cool to see like going from like page 1, issue 1 all the way to the end. Sometimes artist styles just like completely different, but it's cool.
Oh yeah, no, that's my favorite thing. I mean,
Yeah,
I read daily strips all the time, and like Dick Tracy does not look like Dick Tracy when it starts, right? It's like 5 years in, 6 years in, and then you get the weird like side profile of Dick Tracy, right?
yeah.
The
I've been
iconic thing doesn't come for 5 years. That's kind of
I've been
the vibe.
reading. Yeah, I've been reading Peanuts recently, and I started
Yeah,
with like the first ones, and it's like no one no one looks like how they look now, and like
yeah,
Snoopy looks like a tiny little puppy. Charlie Brown doesn't even have like the stripe on his or the zigzag on his shirt until like I don't know, like halfway through the first book. It's
yeah,
crazy,
yeah.
but it's cool. Yeah,
It's fun, and it's you know that is the conversation that you are having with your reader. That's the conversation you're having with yourself. I'm obsessed with
yeah.
conversations right now. I don't know if you know.
We're having a conversation.
We're having a conversation, but I'm obsessed with like the conversation you have with like other creators, and even this even your reading of Peanuts, like affecting living a fantasy, right? Like I find that
Yeah,
interesting.
and it's crazy too because like some of these comics, it's like they've been around for like so long, and like I'm just reading them now. Like even I've been reading Love and Rockets by like the Hernandez brothers, which is like huge iconic comic, and been going. I forget when they started. It was like 80s or something like that.
Yeah.
But just so there's so much stuff, and I'm like just getting to a lot of it now, and it's cool. It's cool seeing like what people have been up to, and like you know, hopefully one day my comics can be enjoyed by other people too.
Yeah, live in that fantasy. That was
Exactly.
bad. Let's stop. Cut me off now, Matt.
Keep going. Keep going.
Mark Maron says you're never late to the table. You're just arriving at the right time. Everybody discovers everything at a different time. We're all on different timelines, and enjoy yours. So there's a panel. There's a 12 panel page in Living a Fantasy, and it's kind of like the anti splash page because it like really did stop me in my tracks. Like I really like how you designed it, and I'll show everybody as well too.
Oh, thanks.
How like when you drop a 12 panel page on somebody, do you think about how it like will stop somebody in their tracks and like slow the reader down and make me like go through every little detail, and then now it brings you back to like your other epic pinups where you have so many details in there, and then you're putting that in this like 12 panel page.
So I feel like for some stuff too, it's like albeit because I'm always trying to like be reading, or yeah, I'm always reading stuff like constantly. And I think a lot of times I'll just like see something and I'll think that looks really cool. I want to try doing something like that. So I think for that in particular, I was reading League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and there was like a few, there's like montages in it that use like 12 panels for each page. And I was like, that's a really cool way to show like a montage. So I was like, let me see if I can like figure out a way to like, how can I fit like 12 things onto a page? But yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff like that where like in the comics. I remember in TURTLEMAN, there's like a fight between TURTLEMAN and Man Turtle, which might have been cut up weird in that PDF. But I remember I was reading Something is Killing the Children by James Tinian, and he did in that book. There's like a lot of time. I think he does that in a lot of his books too. There'll be like it's I don't know what you would call it because it's like a double page spread, but it's panels and they like overlap. Yeah, they like overlap each other, and I just thought that was like a really interesting way because like your natural instinct when you're reading like is to go like page by page, but you kind of have to like read them all at once. So I thought that was cool. And I was like, man, I'll just try to replicate it.
It's time. It's time for lightning round. Are you ready for lightning round, Ryan?
Let's do this.
Let's go. All right. At the end of every episode of What is Comics, we ask the creators the exact same questions to get their responses. This is lightning round. You have to answer these quickly. Do not pull our first guest, Chris Anderson, went way too long on all of his answers. Do not be Chris Anderson.
I'll try.
All right, let's go.
Okay.
What are you bringing / premiering to IC3 this year?
Well, definitely the Marvel prints, and hopefully Living a Fantasy, including issue 5. If I'm not finished in time, it's gonna be 1 to 4.
Fantastic. What is the strange art tool that you grab for all the time? This is a weird question because you work digitally. What's the weird thing?
Maybe like a pillow to put my iPad on.
There you go. Fantastic. We dipped into this a little bit, but are you a schedule or a feeling creator? Are you like I do the work when I feel like it, or I have a regimented time?
It's I'm very regimented. I feel like that's just like how I've always been. Is like I know like exactly what I have to do like each day, and I just like try to do like as much of it as I can.
Yeah, Sam, I like that answer.
Thanks.
What is your proudest moment as a comic book creator?
Oof. I don't know. Maybe it was like when I got like the this bad boy like printed, because I was like, wow, this is really cool. I was able to do that.
Nice. Who is your biggest influence?
So I was thinking about this. It might be Jim Lee, just because he was when I was like a kid. I remember I was just like obsessed with like his artwork, like his X-Men, his Batman. And then when I was getting into drawing again, like 2020, he was doing like Twitch streams, and yeah, I was like watching like all of his Twitch streams, trying to like see like his process for like penciling and inking, because he's like one of the best artists. He's like the president of DC, and he's like, I was like, I feel like I'm like getting like basketball lessons from Michael Jordan right now. So yeah, probably Jim Lee.
Cool. Who is your favorite Disney princess?
Ooh, maybe Ariel.
Great.
Is she a princess? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She's like one of the only like true princesses.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. What stories interest you?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, maybe like satirical stories, because I mean that's kind of like what I do. But I like all kinds of stories, like horror, sci-fi. You know, I don't know if I'm like as good at like drawing or like telling those stories without like putting some like humor in it. But yeah, anything really.
Fantastic.
Was it your James Lipton voice?
This is my James Lipton. Fantastic. I love it.
Ryan, where are you like on King of the Hill?
On King of the Hill? Are they doing like they're doing like a revival of it, I think.
I think they might be doing a revival.
I haven't watched like too much of it. I've seen like some episodes, but I like it.
Okay.
Matt and I were talking earlier. Matt was like, I feel like his art is King of the Hill. I feel like he's a
I
King of the
feel,
Hill
I
guy.
feel like there was like some Simpsons in there, like some King of the Hill. Like I was trying to figure
I've
out.
heard I've heard like Adventure Time for like living a
Yeah,
fantasy in particular.
no, I was
Yeah,
just
I
trying
like
to
King
like.
of
Yeah, no, I was again.
the Hill.
As a reader and as a person, I who reviews comic books, I
And a
try to
man
like,
of a certain age.
and
Let's
I'm also
be
old, and I'm also old
yeah.
too. Yes, I'm old. I got that. But I try to think about like I try to compare things so I can explain to the audience like what this kind of feels like or where it's going, and I usually try to figure out like what the emotional tie is that has me
Hmm.
liking a book or disliking a book. I usually don't talk about books I dislike because I don't think that's really worth anybody's time. Um, but no, I was just like, okay, how would I communicate Turtle Man to somebody if I was like reviewing it? And I was like, okay, I feel, like there's a little, like you said, Adventure Time, a little Simpsons, a little, because your artwork is interesting. It's you have a style, and I was like trying to figure out how to communicate that style to the audience.
Well,
These are
do
all
you guys
things
know?
that do parody stuff though. Like, right? Like that
That's
is
true. Yeah.
what you are relaying is what Ryan has been putting out, which is I do satirical parody things. And I think
Right.
that's
Yeah.
like great. You hit the nail on the head.
That is true.
You're putting out the thing that your thing is supposed to be putting out, Ryan. That's good.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Well, yeah, because have you guys heard of like Mob Psycho or One Punch Man?
Yes.
Yeah.
The artist behind that, he's like another influence because I love the way because he can't draw, but like he's one of the most successful comic book or mangakas um in Japan, and like yeah, he can't do anatomy or like professional looking drawings, but he's incredible at like expressions and like action. And I feel like when I was reading his stuff, that was like a big thing for me where I was like, oh, I can like, you don't have to be able to like draw comics realistically or like realism. Like as long as you're getting whatever idea it is across, like whether it's like a joke or whatever, as long as it's like, as long as it's working for the reader.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan, for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This was great. It was a great conversation.